So you may or may not get a notification about it. Look on.
Where is it going? Oh, there it is.
Oh, I think we're live.
Yeah, I don't have an option. It just says.
So if you go onto the page, just right underneath the post where it says that we're live now, you can share it.
Oh, well, I have to log on to Facebook?
Yeah, so from Facebook.
Okay.
You can share it from Facebook there. So I'm going to share it to my page too. There we go. All right. Did you figure it out, Krystal?
Let's see. Oh, okay, I see. Does it say live? Oh, there it is.
And then make sure once you've done that, you go back to the Zoom, because right now it doesn't show your face. Hi, everyone. If you're joining us, we're just kind of working through some technical issues. Please bear with us just for a little bit.
Okay, I just shared it.
You got it? Okay. And then, oh, there you're back on.
Okay.
All right. There we go. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Mina with Dermatology. Thanks so much for being here today. It is Epidermolysis Bullosa Awareness Week, and we've been sharing lots of information about EB. But mostly what I wanted to do this week is to share the stories of those affected by EB, because they are stories of hope and resilience and strength, and these are some of the most amazing people you will ever meet. And I don't know a better way to raise awareness about EB than through the voices of those who live with it every day of their lives. And so today we have the Martinez family, Supermom Krystal and fabulous big brother Dominik, and Krystal's other son, her second son, she's got three, but her second son, Darren, has epidermolysis bullosa. And the reason that I wanted to have you both on today is because I wanted people to know more about what it's like to care for someone with EB. Because as y'all know, having EB or any chronic illness, for that matter, is a family affair. So I've known this wonderful family for 9 years now. A few months, I think, before Darren turned 2. And Krystal, I'm going to start with you. I've actually never heard this story before, so I can imagine it can be a little bit emotional. But please take us back to the day that Ben was born. What do you remember? What was fuzzy? What was going through your head, and how you were feeling?
All right, we're gonna start this one off emotional. So Darren was born on August 9th, and when we went to the hospital, Darren, he was planned. He was 100% planned. So we had this whole plan on, we were gonna have 2 boys. They were gonna wrestle, they were gonna play, they were gonna be in sports together. And when I went into labor, as soon as Darren was born, and they were cleaning him off, he was bleeding from his mouth, and as they were trying to suction him and clean him, more blood kept coming, and they kept cleaning because they thought that at first they had thought that that there was just a lot of blood in his mouth, and didn't realize that they were actually making him bleed as they were cleaning him because his skin was coming off and in his mouth. And then when they had wiped him, they bent a fingernail back on him. His ring finger on his left hand, his fingernail bent backwards. and kind of came up. And so I was very, of course, I'm like, what's happening? Is he okay? What's going on? I kept asking Michael what's happening, and Michael, they were telling Michael, try to keep her calm. And so they had gave me a medication to calm me down. I don't even know what it was. And then the next thing I know, I am, my baby's being taken to the NICU. Michael's going with him, and I didn't see Darren until probably about 5 hours later in the NICU, and I didn't even know what he looked like really because I couldn't remember. And walking into the NICU, he had bandages all over his legs, his feet, and his arms, and he had a NG tube in his up his nose to feed him because they didn't know what he had at first. But luckily, in the NICU, one of the nurses, she was like, I've seen this before. We need to contact Children's Hospital. And they contacted Dr. Alan Arbuckle at Children's, and he came over right away and did a biopsy. And Darren still talks about it because he has a scar from it. And it's crazy because he never gets any wound where he was biopsied. Like that skin just is just a scar. And so that's how the first few hours went.
Yeah, no, and so it, from those first moments, I mean, were you, so he was in the NICU, how often did you get to see him? And, you know, I guess what was initially sort of told to you about it? How did that, I know we both know Dr. Arbuckle and he's wonderful. And I know that y'all have been lucky enough to have just an incredible team of specialists helping you guide, helping guide you through Darren's care over the years. So what do you feel, you know, having been lucky to have such an incredible team, helped you and supported you the most in, especially in those initial, you know, moments?
So in that moment, I didn't actually meet Dr. Arbuckle until we were released from NICU. And so Darren was in NICU for 7 days exactly, because him and Michael are exactly 7 days apart, and he was released on Michael's birthday. And also the hard thing is Michael had just started a new job, and he couldn't call in, and he would have lost his job. So in that time period, Michael also had to go to work. So I lost my biggest support person at that time, and had to be at the hospital alone with Darren. And that was really hard for me too, because I was trying to, at that time, we didn't have much information. They just said, we think this is what he has, but we can't confirm it until we get the biopsy results. And then they were told to take the G tube out right away and feed him with the Haberman bottle nipple. And so for those of you that don't know, a Haberman is like a elongated nipple, and you squeeze it to get the milk out of the bottle, and you kind of just squeeze it in your baby's mouth. It's usually for children who have a cleft palate because they can't suck. And so then when we got released and we went to Children's, I actually left the very first time we were going to a clinic, and we were in the waiting room, and this lady had came in, and I could tell that she had what Darren had because she was wrapped, but she was in a wheelchair. And I just lost it. I freaked out, and I was like, this is what our future looks like, if he even is going to be here that long, because we at the time didn't know, because the hospital had given us a handout that had different types. And of course my mind went straight to the most severe type, because I was looking at how he was presenting and thinking, oh my gosh, he has the most severe type and he's not going to be around very long. And so a lot of emotions went through, and the nurse, I think it was, I want to say Deb, but I feel like that might not be right, called me and convinced me to come back. And ever since then, the entire team has given us so much hope and so much support, and have made me and Michael feel very confident in what we're doing. Even if we made what we felt were errors, we were always reassured by everybody that it was okay, and what we were doing was just fine. And then they would give us tips and always said to us, you are the parent and we'll listen to whatever you feel like is best, and then just guided us.
So from the perspective of a doctor, so as a pediatric dermatologist, whenever I would get that call that a baby had been born with suspected EB, I always had to take a moment to take a deep breath, because it was really important for me to be a calming presence for the family when I walked into that room filled with emotion and fears and anxiety and despair. And I didn't always know what was told to the family before I went in, so I didn't guide the conversation. I let the family start, so that I have a better understanding of what they understood, what their fears were, what questions they had, and then I would start. But that very first visit, I didn't ever want to overwhelm them in an already incredibly overwhelming situation, because there would be plenty of time to fill in those details later. And if any of you who are watching have ever been in that situation where you're the recipient of bad news, and I've been there myself on that side with my own family members, you know that you hear like 10% of what is being told to you in those moments, because everything else is drowned out. But the one thing that I made sure that they heard loud and clear, because even if they didn't say it, I knew so often that they felt it, was that it was okay. It was okay to touch your baby, that it was okay to hold your baby. And that's when a lot of the parents would really get emotional, because until I said it out loud and gave them permission to do so, they were so afraid that they would hurt their child. And 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 I needed them to know that your child still needs to feel your love, still needs to feel your touch, still needs to feel your heartbeat against them, and because that's what makes them feel safe and loved. And so many women go through postpartum depression, and which is still not talked about enough. But now top that off with having a child with EB. In some instances, I would see the mother detaching, and those initial bonding moments are so important. And it was so important that as part of the medical team that we advocated for that, for the families. Was that a fear that you had at all at the very beginning as you started to understand?
No, I think we always felt like we were hurting him when we, like, because we had of course we had Dominik already. And so with him, we're like, oh, and then it's just instinct to pick up a baby, underneath the arms. And we always had to learn, even for, it took us like a whole year to just, okay, like we can't just pick him up, or even just reminding family members, because that was the biggest thing. I felt so bad, but at the same time, I knew that I needed to protect Darren at all costs. And it's like, you can't hold him like that. You can't, and so it was always, oh my gosh, I'm shaking so bad, just like reliving all of that, because like you said, a lot of it has become a blur. It really has. And I think it's because of all the trauma that was associated with all those years. It's like your mind tries to protect you in a way, so it tries to block out a lot of those scary bad things that happened. But we definitely, I tried breastfeeding him. I tried pumping because he couldn't latch. and I was getting frustrated because I couldn't give him what I wanted to give him. And so it was hard to comfort him, but I always wanted to hold him because I felt like that's where he was the most safe, was in my arms. So I feel for me, it was, I always just wanted to hold him and cuddle him because I didn't know how much time I had with him at that time either.
Now, so Dominic, you were 4 when Darren was born, or 5?
He was 4.
Yeah.
4. Do you remember the first moment that you got to meet your little brother, and and what about it? Remember, if at all?
I think really the earliest memory I have with my brother is probably, I remember at one of our old houses that he got this little drum kit that he had, but I was the one that always played with it. And I remember that he would get toys, like these little baby toys that I've always loved playing with. And I remember playing with them and with Darren, and but it was also kind of hard not being able to like play with my little brother like any other siblings would be able to.
Did
Like,
you were so little at the time? Did you understand that you had to be a little bit more gentle with him? Like how did, I mean, I don't know if you remember that because you were still pretty little, but was that something that you were kind of taught just straight from the beginning?
I think yeah, and I feel like from a really young age that I've always understood that my brother has a condition that doesn't change him in spirit or anything, but I know it does limit him to do certain things. Where I remember having a trampoline where when he'd get on it to not just jump like I'm with my cousins or friends, that I remember him on the trampoline having to be cautious, just kind of sitting down, just bounce like with the little baby. Like he would be little baby, just gotta remember to not having to bounce super hard, super high, just to be really cautious with him. And I always felt like that I've learned that he is limited to do certain things, but a lot of people think that it limits him to everything, which I
So
feel.
we have quite a few people joining us right now. So if you're just joining us, I have the Martinez family here with me. So Krystal and Dominik, and they're sharing kind of their stories about, caring for Darren, who's Dominik's little brother, who has EB. And also, if y'all have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. Krystal and Dominik are super open and about sharing their thoughts. So Dominik, and I know this because I have a little sibling too, but so when the little sibling is born, we get a little jealous about the attention being kind of, spent in another direction when we used to be the stars of the show. Did you ever feel like that kind of growing up, and then also having someone who had a lot more, needs and they needed the attention? Did you ever feel that growing up?
Honestly, I remember a while ago when me and my parents had a conversation, and I did always realize that I am lucky to, because I always realized that Darren needed extra attention, not only because he was the baby of the family, but then also because of his condition. And I feel like what also really helped with that is having loving parents that took everything to make time for me and tried their best and were always there no matter what. And
But you did get jealous a little bit.
Tell me the real story.
He did. I mean, yes, we definitely, our goal was to not let Dominik feel like he was being left behind. So we would try to schedule like once a month. We started with once a month because we knew every couple weeks was too hard, but where one of us would take him to go do something with just one of us. Like, so either Michael or myself would take Dominik and we would go do something with him, fun. So that way he could get that one-on-one time. But then Dominik was like, well, I don't want one parent. I want both parents. And so that was hard too. And this is something that honestly we still kind of struggle with because up until I would say Dominik's gotten a lot more understanding as of last year, but he does, I think he goes through phases like up and down where for the most part he's completely understanding, but then after a while I think he gets where he's like, well, hold on, we haven't done anything together with me and I need attention too. Like, so he has gone through spurts of it, but I would definitely say there are times where he's like, oh, he would get frustrated because he's like, well, I know, or he knows that Darren needs that attention, but at the same time he's like, but I need attention too. So we have struggled with that up until last year.
So one of the things that I often see, kids with chronic illnesses and their siblings often, just because of all the things that they've had to experience, they often grow up too fast. And they miss out on a lot of the childhood joys that, others take for granted. Do you feel like you missed out on anything?
Not really that I have missed out on much, but I do think that my brother have missed out on.
This is about you.
Yeah.
And see, and I think that's the thing that we struggle with all the time is like that just goes to show how much our life does revolve around Darren, because half the time we don't even know who we are as individuals because we're really connected. But I think that Dominik doesn't really know himself as much as he should know himself because he's constantly worrying about Darren with everything.
So Dominik, the very first time that I met you, one of the things that struck me the most was how protective and doting you were of Darren and are still of Darren and your other little brother, Ermias, and your parents, by the way, too. I think you have that that just wonderful, beautiful personality trait. Did you ever witness Darren being bullied? Or were you ever bullied about it? And what did you do in those instances?
I have never seen my brother, or neither have I ever been bullied, but I've always, my friends, like all my friends knew about my little brother, even my friends here, like that never met him, know about him and everything. And like I've told everyone that he's just like you and me. He's normal. There's nothing wrong with him. He just has limitations like that. He can't just go out and just play soccer or football like how we do and not think about just falling. And that it doesn't change him as a person anyway. But I've told all my friends that to never mess with him or bully him, or I've even told other people that to not mess with him, because I've even seen kids in elementary school give him a look sometimes. And it's not just with my brother, it's with any kid I've seen with a disability. with any kind of disability, with either being blind, mentally, physically, I've always told people don't mess with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just like you and me. They're just having whatever they have, and but it doesn't mean to not be friends with them or treat them any different. And that's what I've told a lot of people, even still to this day. It may not even be with my brother, it might just be with a kid with a disability in my school. And I even tell them don't pick on him. So anybody that I know or that I've seen with a disability that has been picked on, I've always told someone something about it and always stuck up for them. And that's one thing I will continue to do and help with these kids understand that they're just normal people.
So my cheeks are hurting because I'm beaming with pride right now because I've witnessed that in you when we've gone to family camp, and like I said, I've always seen you be protective and doting of Darren, but you do that with everybody. Everybody came and everybody around you and probably everybody that you meet, and like it makes me so proud that you're someone that anyone can have in their corner. And so are these conversations that you initiate, or do people ask questions, or you see something happen and you decide to step in?
It's really rare for me to see something happen, but when I do, I definitely confront them and tell them something about them.
But what about, like, do you initiate conversations about your brother?
Yes, and people have asked me about my brother, and when I first got the shirt I was wearing, a lot of people asked me, why does it say like ouch or sorry on these, or why is it made inside out? And I've told them how the the condition, what my brother is like, what he goes through, and like these things, like just putting a band-aid on, you can't even put on their skin because it'll peel it away. Like I've always told them that their skin's sensitive, and when they ask questions about my brother, I've always responded with I was never mad, and I know that a lot of people get kind of scared to ask questions, and I from experience all I know is that it takes one person to ask a question for another person to feel comfortable to ask another. And as like growing up with the kid with the disability, and a lot of people always ask me about my brother and like more about the uh, disability and everything, and just ask me questions about my brother and stuff. And I've always told him, don't be afraid to ask. I won't be mad.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of love right now from Erica, Mr. Steve, Kathy, and Stephanie, and there's some questions coming, so we'll get to those in a little bit. But so around the time that I met y'all, I also met another beautiful human being who had EB, and he was a teenager at the time. And what he so desperately needed was to feel less alone in the world. And normally I have an answer for that. I can't. But he had too many medical needs, and he was too dependent on his family for those needs that it wasn't feasible for him to go to camp by himself. And so he was actually inspiration for me to reach out to Roundup River Ranch, which is a barrier-free medical camp facility that's part of the Paul Newman Serious Fund Network, where we could do a family weekend camp, because there really wasn't anything out there for younger kids who weren't old enough to go to camp, or they had too many medical needs, or really the biggest reason for me was that there wasn't anything out there at the time for those affected by skin conditions, for the families and the siblings to have that support by being around others who could had that shared experience, and also just to have a respite, from it all in a safe environment where there were other, people for sure that could take care of the medical parts of it if anything mattered, but that you could just have just a fun weekend in the middle of a mountain valley next to a river and with the crisp bottom, wind and zip lining, archery, horseback riding, arts and crafts, and all sorts of stuff. And so
No service.
that was
That's no cell phone service. That was the best part.
right. So you could just be with each other and have fun. I mean, it really is something out of a dream. And unfortunately, my friend passed away before he and his family could make it out. But y'all and several other families have benefited from his inspiration. And you've actually been coming out from the very first year that we did it, which I think was it 2012 or 2013. But it's been quite a while. And so, what did having a weekend escape at Roundup River Ranch mean for y'all as a family?
So the first time we went, we were pretty scared because we're like, is this really gonna be somewhere that we can still feel comfortable and safe with Darren? Like, because my biggest thing has always been crowds. Like, I've always been scared to be around a bunch of kids. I've always been scared for him to be around crowds of people, because I didn't want nobody bumping into him or knocking him over. And kids, when they play, they just start running and they don't pay attention. So when we went to camp, seeing how mindful everybody was of each other was very peaceful. Like, I felt at peace that we could just relax and not have to worry about somebody trampling into him or running up and knocking him down. And so that made me feel really happy. Luckily, that first year there was another family there with EB as well, and so we automatically connected with them. And Darren, actually there was two other families at that time, and Darren was really excited about that because he hadn't really been in an environment where he could be a kid with other kids who were like him. And so that was his first experience, his first experience with that. So that made me really happy.
Dominik, what was your favorite memory at camp so far?
I've always liked the archery, and I've always liked it. And the thing that always made me happy was when the other kids would have that bow, pull it back, and hit the target. It was just amazing seeing how happy and excited they get. And Darren and all the other kids would get so excited when they'd hit the target. And it was just amazing. Or even with the fishing over there, when a kid caught a fish or went down the zip line or horseback riding, they're always so happy and excited. And it just made me happy seeing all these other kids happy. And yeah, I just always loved it and always found.
What was, because I mean, Darren had a lot of firsts at camp too. I mean, pretty much everything that you did at camp he had never really done before. So what was kind of and I'll tell you mine, but it might actually be the same one. But what was your favorite memory of seeing him do things at camp and challenge himself in ways that he had never done before?
So there was a few things, but until last year was, of course, the best memory, because Darren 2 years ago wanted a kayak by himself, and nobody at Roundup likes to tell you that you can't do something by yourself. And so the next year that we came, which was last year, Marty had put something together, and so Darren could kayak on his own. And I thought I was not expecting it, because I was thinking, oh, he's not going to remember to get it all ready and situated for him. And he did. And Darren lit up with excitement. And Marty went out there just as with him the first time. And then he was like, oh, he doesn't even need me. He was kayaking on his own. And when Darren got in that kayak and took off by himself, it was kayaking. When I tell you, like, the littlest things can change your life, that changed our lives in a way that I never thought it would. Because watching Darren kayak and seeing the joy that it brought him and how accomplished he felt just made me so happy.
So yes, that's also my favorite moment. And we all got to experience it there together, and it was just one of many moments for him because he had never ziplined before, and he had never, even I think the year before, he wanted to do archery and shoot the bow, but we were afraid what it was going to do with his finger. So we rigged it so that, he just had to release it, but someone else can pull back. And I think pretty sure he hit a bullseye too. So or got it on there. So, all of these things, these triumphant moments, help you realize that your body is differently abled, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there are limitations in what you can do. You just have to be a little bit more creative, and that's what we've always tried to do at camp. And not just for y'all, but for other families that have been to the family camp, it's also made y'all a little bit more comfortable to send him by himself to the other camp that we do, and that's Camp Spirit. So that's a winter ski camp that we hold at Winter Park, Colorado, where the National Sports Center for the Disabled is. And it's a week where, so they have these, and I'll post some pictures of this, but they have these little, they're like sled skis where they pad it up so that it kind of protects their skin a little bit. And then there's ski instructors who hold the reins, but they do all the turns. And we set up race courses in them to kind of go through the turns and win medals. And they get to dog sled, and they get to snowmobile, and do all these things that I'm pretty sure so many people with EB never thought they could do. So at what point did you feel comfortable? Actually, I know the point, and we'll talk about that in a second, but where you felt kind of, okay, he's ready for that.
Well, Casey,
you have to give away the reins of your baby.
So. For a couple of years, she's like, "Oh, he could go." I'm like, "He's not old enough yet." She goes, "Oh, well, but he's so well behaved. I think he could go next year." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." And it was absolutely terrifying. We dropped him off and walked him inside the cabin and dropped him off, and they just wanted us to leave, and we're like, so do we need to could we have some cocoa for a while? Do we just hang out? They're like, nope, just leave. It's best that you do. You shouldn't have even walked in. I'm like, what? So it was, and then I cried. We actually stayed the night because I was scared. I'm like, what if he called? And he did. He actually.
You're not the only member that's done it.
So yeah, it was. But I'm so glad that he went, because that was the independence that he has taken on in regards to wound care himself is been a big relief on us, because it's very straining to do bandages for years. It's very hard, especially just on your body too, because sitting there for hours and hunched over sometimes and maneuvering and stuff. So it was a break that I didn't know I needed and didn't really want, and I was okay with not having that break. But I'm glad for him that I was like, okay, I gave in, and he just absolutely, that's his favorite thing now. So
oh, by the way, Erica asks, I think this is a question for you, Dominik. What's your favorite thing to do with Darren?
Um, One of my favorite things to do with Darren is watch movies because he loves watching movies, especially by Tim Burton. So, and recently he's been watching a lot of those, and like I'll watch them with them too and stuff, and a lot of movies that
What about jumping on trampoline?
we like to jump on the trampoline. He likes playing Call of Duty, so we'll play stuff, and he likes. But one of the biggest things is watching movies with him.
Darren loves his movies.
So you kind of actually, this is a good segue, kind of what you talked about earlier, Krystal, about not knowing how much you needed that break. So at one of the Love the Skin You're In like family day events I did when I was still in Colorado, for children and families affected by skin conditions, the theme was be your own superhero. So we talked a lot about positive self-talk, and in the afternoons the kids got to go to, and Dominik, you got to do it too, but the kids got to go to Superhero Academy where they got to decorate their masks and their capes and make their own superhero profile, and there's what their superpowers would be. But we kind of did some teaching, kind of disguised in there about, what makes, what is a hero, what makes, who are the everyday heroes who inspire you, what makes you a hero, and all of those things. And then later on, they got to do a little superhero, present themselves as the superhero that they know themselves to be, as in a fashion show for the parents, later that afternoon. But while they were doing that, the parents and the caregivers were on the other side, and we were having a small group discussion, where Krystal, you were on the panel to give kind of a parent perspective, and then we also had other young adults who had grown up living with a chronic or severe skin illness, and just to kind of get their perspective. And it was a chance for the families to ask, to be very vulnerable and open, and to ask questions that they didn't feel comfortable asking in front of their kids, because we always have to be strong in front of our kids, but honestly that's exhausting to have to do that all the time. And one of the things, and so I was glad that they had that opportunity to just be free to ask those questions, where there were other people who kind of knew their experience, and they were there just to love and support and not to judge. But one of the questions that one of our facilitators, our friend Bob Mueller, asked everybody was, what do y'all do for yourselves? And it was silent. And like, to me, I think my eyes were just really wide open, because it just, and then parents started to open up that we really don't do anything for ourselves. We I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm exhausted. And so what was so important from that session was, for our next event, that's what it was all about: self-love and self-care and coping in whatever ways that you could, whether that was music, dance, art, theater, play, nature, laughter, yoga, meditation, nutrition, and it's so many other things that we were able to do. And so I'm going to ask you that question now. What do you do for yourself?
So after that, it really did open up my eyes to how much I put myself off. So I started making sure that I did things that helped me. And we started going hiking, because I've always loved to do it, and we stopped doing it for years because I was always terrified of Darren getting hurt. And so, but of course, I have to do it with my family because that's what makes me happy still. Like, it's not the same if I go by myself still, or if I go with just friends or something. So I started trying to make sure that we go on little hiking trips, and which I don't know if that really counts, because it's still not necessarily by myself, but it makes me happy. And it's something that I love to do. And then I started making sure I took a bath. once a month at least, or every couple months. Sometimes it goes longer, but that's also very relaxing, and it's like my me time and my downtime, and it's usually quiet. So yeah.
So I guess we forgot to mention that so Darren's younger brother, so Krystal's the third son, is only one. So that's part of it too. So he just turned one. So they have an infant. So I guess, and I never asked this question to you either, but I mean, so the age difference between Darren and Ermias is 10 years, right? So, and like, I guess at what point, I know that you were so overwhelmed with caring for Darren, and also Dominik was growing up, and I guess what point did you feel like that that you were able to give of yourself to have another child, because I'm sure that kind of went into all of your thinking about that as well.
Well, I would say fear definitely had the best of us for those 10 years. We had talked very heavily the year, actually, probably about the year before I got pregnant, because we really wanted to have another child. But fear and statistics really got the best of us with that. And we did pros and cons, and I was actually going to become a surrogate again, because I was a surrogate before, and so I was actually looking into becoming a surrogate. However, that had fallen through due to the family having some unforeseen circumstances. So I just became pregnant, and I thought that was a sign from God, which is how we chose Ermias's name, that we need to stop letting fear control our lives, and it was going to be okay. And even waiting to get results and find out if Ermias was going to have EB was this, again, it was very traumatic, and it was really stressful and hard emotionally, not knowing if the baby was gonna have EB as well, because it's like, can we go through this again? Like, could we really handle that? And even though we felt like we could, we just still had doubt in ourselves, because it's a lot to take care of a child with EB. And I give props to those who have more than one child with recessive, because it's really hard emotionally, and it's not easy for everybody. So to make that decision. So when we found out that Ermias didn't have EB, I still had nightmares that he was, like, I would still have dreams and all that he was going to be born missing skin. So it was really hard, but I'm glad that we have him, because it's definitely it was missing piece to our family.
It's been fun watching Darren as a big brother, because I see so many of those traits that you, Dominik, have in him too, because he does that same thing. He's so protective and supportive and loving with him as well, and it's been nice to see kind of him caring for somebody else too. So and that's been fun. And Ermias is he's just a blessing. He's such a light, yeah. Such a happy baby all the time, and I can see just how much it's brought your family together in even more incredible ways. So let's talk about, like, we're just just a few more questions, but the pandemic hits, right? And when you have a chronic illness, I mean, so much of that, the strength comes from that supportive community, and a lot of things have turned to virtual. And so what kind of helped y'all through, and this is just not being a family with someone who has EB, but just how did you get through that when you didn't have, I guess, direct access to having the support that you might have had otherwise?
Well, I mean, honestly, when the pandemic hit, I did lose one of my biggest support people. because she retired. And so she was my person for 10 years. And so it was very during that time I also lost her. But then you started the Joy Train, and that honestly helped us get through, like, I feel like the most brutal part of the entire thing, because it's what we all needed. And
tell everybody what the Joy Train is, because they don't know.
so Mina started the Joy Train, which we logged on. What do we do every night or every couple nights?
Beginning.
Yeah. And so Mina would come up with these activities, whether it was like us cooking. We did cake in a mug. The boys loved that. So we would all just get on Zoom and we would cook together, or we would dance sing. Or sing or play music or karaoke or games. And honestly, like, you and everybody who was on there, your nephews and everybody that joined, was like our biggest.
Mr. Steve's on, actually, so he.
Oh, yep, and Mr. Steve. So for us, that was what we needed, and that was the biggest for all of us, because we didn't really have we weren't and we didn't know who to reach out to or have that way. And Darren too, like, he's not used to I mean, he has some friends that he talks to, but not really like that. So I felt like the Joy Train is what was it for all of us. And then and then even when we didn't do it with you, we were just doing it with each other. We're like, oh yeah, let's cook together. So we just started doing other games together, and that was our new thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm so happy. My nephews still ask about y'all all the time, so we'll have to do it again sometime. We'll have to have a little Joy Train reunion. So yeah. So just maybe to kind of cap it off, what are ways that you would encourage other parents or other siblings to advocate for not just yourselves, because I think so you guys we didn't really talk a lot about that, but y'all have both been such incredible advocates for EB and kids with other chronic illnesses, and it's and I think when I went back, one of the things that we did at that event, where we're talking about self-love and self-care, and for me, one of the things that helps me the most when I'm in a place of when I'm feeling super anxious or depressed or feeling overwhelmed, when I am in the service of others, is what kind of gets me out of it, because I feel like that gives me meaning and that gives me purpose. It makes me feel worthy and that I have some value to give to somebody else, and that I have the ability to help somebody else. And I think being an advocate for yourself and others does that too, because you feel empowered. And so how and y'all have done that in so many different ways. And so as what would be your message to other parents and other siblings of things that you can do, and how you would approach that to encourage them to do the same?
My biggest thing, I feel like, is always just not being scared to share your story or share your true feelings, and not worry about being judged. Because I feel, for me, if I act in a way that I'm embarrassed of my story or ashamed of my story, then it's not going to ever get out there. Or because for me, I think I said this the other night on a video, that I often teeter-totter back and forth on, am I sharing too much information, or am I sharing too much? But then other times I'm like, no, I want to share more, because I want people to know what we go through and what our life is like, because I could help somebody else who might be going through the same thing. And I used to be scared to tell people how I really felt, or what I was experiencing, or even just talk about my fears with EB, because I was worried about other people just being like, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or whatever the case may be. So I think my biggest advice is share your story, because there's somebody who wants to hear it, and there's somebody who's going to listen, and there's somebody who's going to help, and you could also be helping somebody else by just being honest with your story.
So we talked about how you felt like you couldn't, that it was so much a part of your life that you didn't know necessarily what your identity was outside of it. So right now, what is something that you would like the world to know about Krystal that has nothing to do with having a child with EB?
Nothing that has to do with a child with EB, but has to do with being a parent. Because in all honesty, my boys and Michael are my entire world, and everything that I do, I want to do with my family, because that's where I feel the happiest, and that's where I make the most memories. Like, I even just going and doing something, even if I go with my family or a friend for a little while, I still feel guilty that I left my kids and I made a memory, or if I went somewhere without them, I feel so guilty. But I guess one thing that I would like people to know about me as a person is that I care about how other people feel at all times, and I will do anything to help somebody when they need the help, because I like helping people.
Yes, she does. And I've had the privilege of being able to witness that for the past 9 years. So, and Dominik, I've never asked you, what do you want to be when you grow up? So Dominik, you're 15 now, right?
Yep.
So you're close to kind of driving age, that kind of stuff, which is probably freaking your mom out a little bit right now too.
Me out every day about him, like his facial hair, his age, his entire being. I'm like, stop growing.
Dominik, I want you to tell me a little about you. What do you like to do? What do you hope to do?
My biggest goal in my life is to become a professional soccer player.
Oh.
To give back to my community and to give back to a lot of people that have helped me and my family, and to get EV out there and get the word about EV out there and stuff, and just help a lot of people. And my backup career would be an architect.
Oh, that's just the back. That's pretty awesome, but hey. So I just want to thank y'all so much for being so open. I know I asked some really personal and vulnerable questions, and but as you said, sharing that story, because I don't know that people would even feel comfortable to ask or necessarily share that. But when you share that story, you allow others to also feel comfortable doing that, and allow them to also and empower them in so many ways. So Dominik, oh, okay. Like I said, from the first moment that I met you, what struck me so much was how, like I said, how loving and doting you were of your brother, but not just your brother, all the kids at camp, everybody around you. And when you have that kind of when you have that kind of love in your heart, and you put that kind of love out into the world, and now everybody else has had a chance to experience it just from the way, when you're 15 years old and you figured out so many things that it takes people sometimes a lifetime to figure out. No matter what you end up doing, whether it's playing soccer or becoming an architect or whatever it is that you're doing, when you have that kind of love, I mean, there's no possible way you're not going to succeed. And it has been such a blessing to watch you grow up for the last 9 years, and you're just an amazing human being. And Krystal, um, I, I've actually, the very first time I met you was actually, I think I was in my last year of training at Children's Hospital, Colorado, and you were a young mom, but you were figuring things out, and you were so determined and so fierce, and just like you said, so much of what you do, even when I asked you about something about yourself, it was so tied into your family, not because you don't have your own identity, but because the love that you have for your family and for others is such a part of your identity. So don't ever feel like there's nothing that's separate. That is who you are. That's what makes you who you are. And that's how, someone like this Dominik, 15-year-old, like old soul, can be in this world because you provide so much love and support to your family. And I'm so glad that so many others have as they've been on this, but also hopefully will share it and get a chance to know how what an incredible human being you are, but hopefully be inspired to inspire others to advocate for themselves and for others as well. So thank y'all so much for being on this. And I really, really hope that we get to see each other in person soon. We actually, this month is usually the month that we have our family camp. And unfortunately, everything had to be virtual. And so this is the first year in, what was it, 7 years that we haven't had a chance to do that. so I'm hoping 2021 is different, and I love y'all, I miss y'all, and I hope to see you soon. I'm actually going to post the links to Roundup. I'm going to post the links to Roundup River Ranch and the other things, below, so that people can have some, can look them up and find out a little bit more about that too. But any last words that y'all want to say?
Yes, I'd like to say thank you for everything that you do for us and that you do for the whole community, because without you, I just feel like just many opportunities wouldn't be out there for kids like Darren, and even just with any other skin conditions. And your events they've brought so many good moments to our family. And even just, we'd even talk about when Darren was at main event, when he did the tightrope walking and that with you, like that, all of that stuff we've made so many memories with you as well. And it's just like, with, I don't know, I don't even have words, because you're just such an amazing person. I'm so thankful that you are a part of our lives. I'm so thankful that we had you here in Colorado, and we miss you out here. But I'm very happy for you out there in Texas. And I definitely have been already putting your name out if there's anybody out there in Texas, and I'm like, this is who you need to contact. So yes, I can't say enough good things about you, and thank you for this opportunity, and we appreciate it very much.
You're very, very welcome. And so Darren, on the last note, Darren asked me before I left, I think actually at that event was the last time I saw y'all before the next family camp, but he asked me before I left Colorado with tears in his eyes, but he asked me, are you still gonna come back? Yeah. And I told him that you can't get rid of me that easily. Yeah. So have I kept my promise?
Yeah, because we were crying, and we're like, oh my God, this means you're never gonna come back. But you definitely did not just abandon us. And I'm so thankful for that, because we need you.
Well, thank you, Dominik. I'm going to give you the last words. Any last words that you want to say about anything?
I would like to say thank you for everything that you have done for me and my family, and also thank you because you have been an inspiration in my life to help and also give back and help everyone in my community, and I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome. Are you gonna dress up for Halloween? Are you too old for Halloween?
He's already got a costume.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's a game character from a game called Assassin's Creed.
Very cool. Well,
Yep.
I'm not gonna keep everyone. We could talk for hours, and we have done that before. But it's been about an hour, so I'm gonna say good night to everybody. Thanks so much for being here, y'all. And we had quite a crowd there, so I really appreciate y'all. Please, this is gonna be on our page, so if you want to share it for people to watch the replay, that would be awesome, because I think that Dominik and Krystal shared some really wonderful tips and information, and just straight from the heart. So thanks everyone for being here, and have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.